Topic C, class attributes and class methods. Now, class attributes are just normal attributes that belong to the object with the exception that they don't belong to the instance of the object. So, for example, if you have a car, the examples we had, if that's the Mazda, then the model and the make of that car is different from that being, the DeLorean or the Ferrari. So the attributes of individual car objects are different. The class attribute is like the universal attribute that all the cars are going to have, and it's by default set to the same thing. So class attributes are declared not in the init constructor, but just under the class definition. So they're also accessed two different ways. The first, the more normal one, is you actually, instead of saying Mazda dot class attribute, you can say car dot class attribute. So basically they're accessed through the class name, but they can also be accessed through the name of the instance. So in this table, you kind of see how they compare to the instance attributes. The instance attributes are the ones we've seen so far. So instance attributes bound to the instance, class attributes bound to the class. So instance attributes, you have to go to the individual object name to get the attribute. Class, you can get it from both instance and the class. So the instance attributes change value for this particular object. Class changes it for all instances. And finally, instance attributes created in the init, whereas class attributes are created at the top of the class with no prefix. So let's have a look at an example in code. Right here, we've got a web browser example. The web browser has three attributes. It has history, which basically takes the only parameter. So history is a list with the current page being in the list when created. Current page is the parameter of the init class. And self.incognito, that's a boolean. And that, you see, that's not created in the constructor, that's just automatically declared false. So here are examples of instantiating a web browser. So at this point, you can see how to access basically attributes inside that web browser. And what we're going to do right now is go into code and have a look at that class attribute and how we can operate with it. So in this video, we're going to get hands-on with the web browser class, and particularly the attribute connected, because this is the class attribute, and it has the interesting properties of class attributes. But before we start, I'll just give you a quick intro into the web browser class, which you've seen in the slides. So you basically create a web browser by putting its current page on. The current page is saved in the current page variable. It's also the only item in a list called history. And there's also incognito mode, which is not going to be used currently. So these are the three attributes, and this is here the class attributes, whereas these three with the self in front of them are instance attributes. So if we create these two web browser objects, one is Chrome, one is Firefox, and they're both connected. The reason why this is there is because, well, it doesn't matter how many browsers you have. If your PC is connected, then all your browsers have an internet connection. So let's just, before getting started, let's just print the state of both. We're going to print Chrome dot, and we can do the same for Firefox. And what you're going to see is, they have a history, which is basically a list of the current page. There's a current page, which is different for either of them. One's Facebook, one's Google. They have an incognito mode. There is no mention of the class variable connected. And yet, we should be able to check it. So we can basically print Chrome dot connected. And we're going to find out that is true. So the same can be done for Firefox. I probably don't need to do that, but I will. So both Chrome and Firefox are connected. Now, you can actually change this attribute, but then something interesting is going to happen. I'm actually going to change the dot connected attribute for Chrome. I'm going to say connected is false. And then I'm going to print both those dictionaries again. And watch what happens. So this top one is Chrome. And all of a sudden it has an extra attribute. So what happens is when you try to set a class attribute to a different state, it creates a copy and that becomes like the instance attribute. Whereas it's not seen for the Firefox. So Firefox.connected is still true, right? So we can print, and since it's getting unwieldy, I really should actually Firefox connected. I should actually comment these so that they make more sense. So I'm just going to say Firefox.connected. And Firefox connected is true. All in the meantime, Chrome connected is false. And I'll just put Chrome here. Just so that you can see that it's not, you're accessing this sort of shallow one. So Chrome connected is false, Firefox connected is true. And so the final thing, what if you want to change this attribute for the whole class? What if you want to do that? Well, this is how we can do that. You see how here we said Chrome.connected? Well, web browser. Now that accesses that very variable. And with this change, when we print Chrome and Firefox connected, even Firefox should return false, because we set the whole web browser. So just to recap, in this video, we explained how web browser class functions. We have checked individual class attributes, so class attributes from Chrome and from Firefox. We've actually changed the attributes for the instance only when this was Chrome.connected, and we have changed attributes for all instances with basically that code on line 20. This here is a very quick example on the mechanics of how we can count instances of a class, and that's also done via class attributes. The num of web browsers here is an example of a class attribute. It's set to 0, and that is accessed in the init. So every time an object is created, that num is accessed through web browser.num of web attributes, and it's incremented by 1. Now, let's encode what that looks like. So in this video, I'm going to explain how we can create a counter that counts instances of an object. And the best way to do that is to use a class attribute. So in the last example, we had connected equals to true, and here we can add a counter. We can call that anything we like, I guess, counter web browsers. And we set it to 0 because that's going to be the initial value of that. Now, when do we want to iterate it? Well, we want to iterate it every time a web browser is created, basically inside the init function. Now, this code, one second, I copied that. It's a long variable name, I do not want to type it again. Plus equals to 1. Well, this code looks like it should do it. However, you need to specify where this variable comes from, where this attribute comes from. And it comes from the web browser class. So, web browser dot counter browsers plus equals to 1. So this line of code is going to increase that attribute by 1. So every time a web browser is created. In fact, I'm going to print it here before we create 2 web browsers. We can print web browser dot counter web browsers, and we can print it here, web browser dot counter web browsers. All right. So if I run this, it's going to print 0 and then 2. And if we create another web browser, I don't know, Safari equals to web browser, something, is twitter.com. If I print the count again, that's going to count another web browser being created, so that should be 3. And there you go. That was really simple. So, how you count instances of an object is you create a class variable. You iterate that class variable by basically accessing it with a class name inside the init class and doing the iterating plus equals 1. And from then on, every time an object is created from that class, the counter goes up.